Board members, we appreciate your patience as we work through this agenda. We are, if you remember before lunch, we talked about, or we postponed R277-304. These are agenda items 3.6 and 3.7, and we are going to go back to those. And we have Vice Chair Bollinger from the Law and Licensing Committee is going to. Well, I guess I can continue to go because we're gonna start, but I will turn 307 over to you, or I'm sorry, 3.7 over to you. Yes. So we are back on 3.6. If you will recall, we had an amendment go through, and then we had questions about Standard 6. So the amendments had gone through. We were back to the original motion of that, and the original motion would be that the board approve R277-304 incorporated by reference document, Special Education Preparation Foundational Competencies, Draft 1 as amended on second and final reading. There was some concern on Standard 6. So with that, I will look for any lights. Member Earl.
Sorry, I don't know if, I just sent the language in person to you, I mean, in email to you that's suggested. And then if, let's see, I probably need to send it to a staff member, right? Do you have it? Okay, let me send it to you. You got it? Okay. All right, let me pull up mine. I'll go ahead and kind of read through this section. Okay, so we have on 601, SF 601, knowledge of the rationale and key components of multi-tiered approach. Anyways, it has a number of items there. Do I need to read all through those? At the end of that, it just says it would be to strike for providing social, emotional, behavioral supports that are inclusive of and accessible to all students. Okay, I don't need to speak to it yet, right? Okay, so that's the one piece. The next piece is on 6.03, which would add the word, so it's support positive student behavior and respectful interactions. And then on incorporate, it would strike a trauma-informed, and it would add an approach that is sensitive to individual students' experiences and needs. And then on 605, it would be knowledge of the relationship between behavior and academics performance, including, and then it strikes to recognize the behavior difficulties can impact academic difficulties and vice versa, and then knowledge of is stricken. And then it would say, so including underlying conditions or contextual factors that can impact both behavior and academic performance, and that students can have unrelated academic and behavioral difficulties. Okay, and then on 608, it would be apply knowledge and implement a behavior intervention plan, a BIP, that can be generalized to other environments as outlined in the USBE special education rules. The BIP shall consider social implications for feasibility across education settings for general education teachers and other team members to assist in the implementation and progress monitoring. And then on 6.09, this is just a clarification. It's knowledge of methods to collect and interpret behavioral data using reliable and valid processes across all settings, using assessments and other evaluation materials that are selected and administered as required by, and then it gives the federal code. Okay, I won't talk to that yet. And then on 6.13, it's replacing of culture and diversity with of a student's background on behavior and educational programming. And then 6.14, it would be including apply knowledge to describe and assess important features and characteristics of school-wide systems of behavior support, including issues related to disproportionate representation in special education and striking and the intersectionality between race and disability. And then on 6.15, it would be knowledge of characteristics and the general structure of an ecological curriculum designed to help students with disabilities learn functional skills in different environments, homeschool, community, and vocation to support individualized education programs and progress, including knowledge of how to train staff and or caregivers as appropriate. And then it would strike the end of that, to implement behavior support plans effectively, to implement a free and appropriate education.
Okay, the motion has been stated. Is there a second? We have a couple of seconds. Back to you, Member Earl.
Yeah, we can go through each one if you want to. I think some of these, the first on 601, the behavioral plans actually is it's just simplifying. The language struck is actually what's articulated in each of those different behavioral plans. There's no need to replicate it. This just creates a clarification. And the next one is the 603. Trauma informed means a lot of different things. So we just asked, what is it you want here? Let's be really specific. It's being sensitive to students' experiences and their needs. So just really clear there. So that it's not ambiguous what's needed. On 605, once again, there's kind of a repetition there. It's just simplifying, clarity. On 608, there was a question around what socially valid was. So we just asked, what are you trying to say? What's this trying to say? So it's the social implications and feasibility in the regular, across educational settings. So making sure that the BIP can kind of go across several different education settings without social problems for an individual or a student. So
Can I just pause
Yeah.
for a second and ask staff, whoever's driving, to maybe keep up with the
sorry.
with each section as it's going through. So we just went through 608. We are on to 609. Is that?
Yes.
Thank you.
The language stricken is actually in the law, but there's also 4 or 5 other provisions in the law. And so it's either list them all out or just reference the code and administered as required by. Then if this ends up changing with current administration or something, it's, you know what I mean? We don't have to go back in and address every little thing as that happens. So, and then just clarity on 613, 614, disproportionate is what they need. Disproportionate representation is what our staff have to turn into the federal government and the LEAs have to do. So that's a more accurate representation of what they're required to do. And then just clarity on 615, that it's an individualized education plan that directs whether it's social. Sometimes it might be social. Sometimes it might be completely academic that's on an IEP. So this is just more catering to the actual individual students' programs and progress. And then when we're done, I do have one more amendment after this that staff had requested. So.
I just have a point.
Okay. Member Bogus.
So, Member Earl, I do believe both times you skipped over 6.02. Did you not want to make that amendment?
Oh, my apologies.
It's on the board, but I don't believe you stated it outright. I just want clarity.
It
Thank
is
you.
on the board, and I don't know why I guess because it wasn't in red. Anybody have a problem with including that? Okay, so in 602, it would be putting in accountability practices, which we now have within our law. We have a definition for that, or our rule. So making sure it's at least included here so we've got consistency is the only thing there.
Okay. I'm not seeing any okay, Member Bollinger. I'm not reading this until, yeah, go ahead.
Chair, may I direct a question to staff, please?
Yes.
I'm just curious on that last one, the SF06.15. Can someone explain a little bit more about what that means? I mean, for me, when the wording changes from behavior support plan to individualized education programs in progress, I just want to understand the purpose of that whole bullet, what are we trying to accomplish there? Because behavior support plans or behavior intervention plans can be an amendment or an addendum to an IEP, but they're not necessarily the exact same thing. They are associated, but I'm just trying to understand that bullet and how that would impact what the expectation is there for our licensing.
Or is it in 11?
15.
And it's on the screen currently. Of course, it's easier for me to read the screen than you. Thank you, Jerry. But we have some staff willing to answer that. If you'll just state your name and before you answer, that'd be helpful.
Can you hear me? Okay. Kim Fratto, Director of Special Education Programs. So it wasn't, that area was not speaking specifically to a behavior intervention plan, just behavior supports, and we felt that it was, could be captured in a student's individualized education program because the program is inclusive. It's a program, we get that often confused with plan, but it's a whole education program for a student with disabilities, so it should be inclusive of if they needed behavior support or academic support or whatever support they needed. It wasn't just behavior.
Okay, so I just was trying to clarify, because since this is under the behavior portion of this, that doesn't
Yeah.
change what this is meaning.
Right.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to read this and we're going to vote. This is like an unofficial call to question unless I see anything.
Okay.
Okay,
Oh, holy moly.
please, Member Davis.
It's a lot to just get today. So I guess I'm just asking in the future when it's this much amount of stuff, can we like send it back to committee so we can have time to process or at least bring it back a month later or something?
Note to self, I made that motion.
To send it back to committee?
I did make the motion, yeah.
To send this one back to committee?
Yes, I did.
It was considered, we received feedback and we decided to move forward, so. Okay,
Would you like,
Member Lear.
would you like us to take turns?
I don't mind these changes too much, and I've, through Sarah, conferred with Dr. Voorhees to say the changes, the wording changes don't make any difference, but I just feel like I need to say out loud that it really frustrates me that there are buzzwords that I'm completely unaware of that these kinds of experiences seem to be trying to get rid of. And that really is frustrating to me. I wish we had a lexicon of buzzwords not to use so that we wouldn't have to have these experiences when it doesn't seem substantively different. But because Dr. Voorhees, I don't want to use too strong of a word, has said there are not really any substantive changes to these words, then I'm okay about this. But I'm just bothered that there are buzzwords that some of us are not as conversant with as others, that are evil or bad or are to be avoided. Let's say that.
Thank you, Member Lear. Now, Molly and I are going to tag team this. We're not going to high five between each one, but we are going to just go back and forth. So we're going to restate the motion. We're just going to read it as it would read in the manual. Is that fair? Mm-hmm. Okay. If these amendments were to be adopted here. So and I'll start with one, you go two of them. Okay, so the motion then is that the board amend R277-304 incorporated by reference document. And I'm sorry, Member Bollinger, I saw your light. Jump in there. That's what I'm saying. Do this before I get like halfway down
Just
the
one
list.
point of order. There's just, in the document itself and up here, it says LBRI instead of LRBI on line 4 of this. So it's correct the first time, but not the second time. So if we're going to make this change, I just would suggest that we make that correction.
Good catch. Good catch. Thank you. Okay, so the motion before the board then is that the board amend R277-304 incorporated by reference document, Special Education Preparation Foundational Competencies, Draft 1, with the following changes to Standard 6 competencies. SF 06.01, knowledge of the rationale and key components of a multi-tiered approach, e.g. positive behavioral interventions and supports, PBIS, least restrictive behavioral interventions, LRBI, in accordance with USPE's LRBI Technical Assistance Manual, Response to Intervention, or RTI, and Multi-Tiered System of Support, or MTSS.
SF 06.02, demonstrate ability to plan, teach, and use effective Tier 1 behavior support strategies in multiple school settings, e.g. classrooms, hallways, playground, lunchroom, etc., to increase the frequency of positive behavior through routines, procedures, expectations, rules, physical arrangement, consequences, engagement, accountability practices. Knowledge of when more intense strategies are necessary based on data, and implement interventions with fidelity as necessary, tiers 2 and 3.
SF 06.03, demonstrate application of high quality evidence-based instructional practices that help to bullet 1, support positive student behavior and respectful interactions. Bullet 2, maximize positive student outcomes. And bullet 3, incorporate an approach that is sensitive to individual students' experiences and needs.
SF 06.05, knowledge of the relationships between behavior and academic performance, including underlying conditions or contextual factors that can impact both behavior and academic performance, and that students can have unrelated academic and behavioral difficulties.
SF 06.08, apply knowledge and information gathered from a functional behavior assessment to develop and implement a behavior intervention plan, or BIP, that can be generalized to other environments as outlined in the USPE special education rules. The BIP shall consider social implications for feasible across education settings for general education teachers and other team members to assist with implementation and progress monitoring.
SF 06.09, knowledge of methods to collect and interpret behavioral data using reliable and valid processes across all settings, using assessments and other evaluation materials that are selected and administered as required by 34 CFR 300.304.
SF 06.13, apply knowledge of current approaches to providing comprehensive behavioral support, including de-escalation strategies, legal and ethical issues, and the impact of a student's background on behavior and educational programming.
SF 06.14, apply knowledge to describe and assess important features and characteristics of school-wide systems of behavior support, including issues related to disproportionate representation in special education.
SF 06.15, knowledge of characteristics and general structure of an ecological curriculum designed to help students with disabilities learn functional skills in different environments, e.g. home, school, community, and vocational, to support individualized education programs and progress, including knowledge of how to train staff and/or caregivers as appropriate. Board members, please vote.
Good reading.
Okay, that passes. 13 in favor, 1 in opposition, being Member Hymas. And so with that, we are back to an underlying motion. And that motion is that the board approve R277-304, incorporated by reference document, Special Education Preparation Foundational Competencies, Draft 1 as amended on second and final reading. Let's vote.
Thank you, Chair. We'd like to move to item 3.7, R277. Thank you, Chair. We'd like to move to item 3.7, R277304, Teacher Preparation Programs Amendment. And we have a motion for the board that the board approve R277304, Teacher Preparation Programs, Draft 2 on second and final reading.
Thank
I
you.
can, I can speak to that if you'd like.
If you'd like, it's from the committee, but if you'd like, if you'd like, it's from the committee, but if you'd like to give additional context, then please.
This just adds in some of the changes we made. Obviously, this incorporated document was a big portion of that, as well as some changes from with early literacy and the naming of those documents, and that the early childhood was a pre-K through third grade instead of a kindergarten through third grade.
Thank you. Member Earl.
I have an amendment. Staff have just requested that we strike mild, moderate disabilities and replace it with mild, moderate support needs. And then also strike severe disabilities and replace it with complex support needs. Support needs.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Vice Chair Hart.
So is this in line with all the boxes that we need to check on various forms and things coming from the federal government?
Yes, it is. So this is just around what we call the endorsements that we attach to a license. So it's just, these areas are mild, moderate, complex, deaf, hard of hearing. They're just all endorsements that attach to a license. So we just want to propose to change the language to be more, to move away from deficit.
And I don't disagree with that at all. I just don't want to have to translate, like, if it's called forever and a day, and I, you know, we go through this with English learners, ML, EL, ELL. I mean, at some level, there has to be some consistency. You're saying there's no time in which a teacher would be confused about what they're teaching or what they're qualified to teach if we change to this language.
I don't know that I could guarantee there's no time that somebody would be confused, but.
Fair, absolutely
yeah.
fair. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
we're not going off on a tangent here.
No, our institutes of higher education are making the request to change that terminology, and that's what they're going to in their pre-service programs for educator prep.
And it is in line with IDEA language.
Yes, I mean, we will still have documents and technical assistance that come out comes out from IDEA and different organizations that refer to students with complex support needs, significant cognitive disabilities, or severe disabilities.
Okay.
They're kind of all used interchangeably.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, I just, in talking about that glossary that we need to someday create, that's just another entry. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Brinton.
I just wanted to, Chair, make an amendment to strike two lines 116 and 117.
So we have an
So
amendment.
So we have to
on-
speak to that first.
Well, if does that amendment, does your motion affect this amendment?
No.
Okay, then let's put you
wait.
in the queue.
Okay.
Okay? Member Davis. And remember that the amendment, it's on the screen, but it's that the board update R277-304, Section 7, to update mild, moderate disabilities with mild, moderate support needs.
Severe to complex. Or would it be just the same to say severe support needs or complex support needs? Are they the same thing? And then my last question is, in our actual endorsements that, or licensure that students walk out of the university with, it used to be mild, moderate, severe, profound. I mean, what is it exactly called now?
Staff, please hit that button.
Jordan Dahan Monolay, Special Education Personnel Preparation Coordinator. So I think the idea behind it is getting away from words that have maybe a negative connotation to it, right? Kind of like when we did emotional behavioral disability as opposed to emotional disturbance. When you look at a student and you think severe, there's a negative connotation that's associated with it. Complex support needs focuses more on the needs of the student and less on the disability that they have.
Totally agree with that.
And so what we've seen with universities is they're moving towards this model as opposed to severe and mild moderate. Right now, everything else in board rule does say mild moderate or severe. So we're trying to start to adjust that language slowly as the board is looking at these new rules and trying to meet the field where it's at. Does that help answer
Okay,
your
so
question?
quick follow-up, but currently the licensure is only mild, moderate, or severe profound, and that has not changed.
Oh, correct. To attach to a special education license area. There are a couple others that can attach to a special education license area. Within the Apple SPED program, for example, we just do the two. We do mild, moderate, or complex support needs, but they have to have at least one.
And we are calling it complex support needs
Well,
for
that's
our licensure.
not yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I knew we'd get there.
Thank you. Speaking to this motion, Member Bollinger, please.
Yes, thank you. If I may just do a follow-up to Member Davis's. So just for special ed teachers that might be listening and saying, how does this change my licensure? If it currently says mild, moderate disabilities as an endorsement, is the idea that it will eventually change to match this language? And if so, does that happen with a relicensure, or will it happen automatically?
I think Malia's online, and that's a Malia question. Is Dr. Hyde online?
Hello. I am online. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please.
Oh, perfect. I'm Malia Hyde, Executive Coordinator of Educator Licensing. So with the approval of this amendment and the board rule, then what we would do as far as licensing goes is we would rename the mild, moderate disabilities endorsement to mild, moderate, I can't see the language, support needs. And then we would rename severe disabilities to complex support needs. And so today, if a special educator were to print their license, it would show mild, moderate disabilities. But after the change is approved and the administrative rule is enrolled, then we would update that within our Cactus system. And then when an educator goes in and prints the license in, say, April, sometime after the board rule would be enrolled, it would say special education with mild, moderate support needs as the endorsement name.
Thank you. Member Bogus.
Thank you. I am very concerned about how this is going to affect our interstate agency compact and all of those other things. It took me a decade to get that license into this state. And how does this affect people moving out of state, coming into state? All of those things that become very complex very quickly.
Chair, if I may.
Please.
Yes, so I can speak to that very well. I happen to be the chair of the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact Board, and changing these endorsement names would not impact the Teacher Mobility Compact. We work very closely with our compact, the other compact states, and to understand what their license actually qualifies a teacher to do. And per the compact, if somebody has a professional license with endorsements, et cetera, in another compact state, and they come to Utah, then we would issue whatever is the most reasonable equivalent. And so we are very familiar with some of those differences. And I agree, Board Member Bogus, it is much simpler than it has ever been before.
Thank you. So the motion then before the board, this is an amendment, that the board update R277-304-7 to update mild moderate disabilities with mild moderate support needs and severe disabilities with complex support needs. Let's go ahead and vote. Okay, that passes 11 in favor, 3 in opposition. Those in opposition being Member Green, Member Kelly, and Member Bogus. So this brings us to the underlying motion. However, we did have Member Brinton in the queue. Is that still Okay. Member Brinton.
Okay, I want to change that motion a little bit. Well, there's no motion. Or, there's no motion. Okay, so I want to make a motion to strike line 116 and then switch out the word restorative with accountability on line 117.
Okay, do we have a second? Or do we want to wait to get that on the screen? I'll second. We have a second. While that's coming up, Member Brinton, you want to speak to that?
We've already worked in some other places where we changed out restorative to accountability and trauma informed. Yeah, that wording seems so broad that we've changed in other places as well.
Okay, Member Lear?
I just have a question of the maker of the motion, if I can ask, if she'll respond. I'm curious what it is about these phrases that you don't like or you would prefer to change. Can you help me? I'd like to understand.
Sure. I think restorative practices just is a buzzword that's linked to DEI and social justice and not holding people accountable in education that we've seen where restorative it has come to kind of mean that there's nothing done, that they're not held accountable, I guess, for their actions.
And trauma-informed?
Trauma-informed seems like such a broad definition that I don't even quite understand where we're coming. What does it mean to be coming from where we're responding just to trauma? I don't.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you. Member Earl?
Yeah, what's the word? The accountability practices aligns with what we've already incorporated in other documents. And so I think that's just, it's broader than, when I say broader, it's got different practices. We've defined it differently. And then I would also say the trauma-informed is just that there's all kinds of definitions of what that could be. And so we can either be more precise or we can say exactly what we mean, but I think because this has many different interpretations, I think it's better to either strike it or, be more clear in our language there.
Thank you. Member Davis?
I'm trying to find I'm looking for something that I sent someone, but I can't find it right now. I was in a school the other day, and one of the specialist instructional coaches said to me, "Does USBE have any resources on trauma-informed practices?" She said, "I have a lot of great resources that work with most of my students. I have a student, I've tried all these things, and it's not working. Do we give up on the student, or do we dig deeper?" I said, USBE has some great resources. She said, "This kid has been through so many hard times, and I keep having the expectation that I have of all the other kids, and I keep working, and I just can't get him there, so I think he needs something different." And I sent her the great resources that we have at USBE to help teachers who need more. When they want to hold a high expectation instead of giving up on a child, but they just need to help understand how to get there because this child is just shutting down constantly, and possibly because it's been through lots of very difficult circumstances. So, I've read Bad Therapy. I know the rap out there. I think we, as Board Member Earl said, we have to define what it means for us here and what it's going to look like for our students and how it's going to help them in their toolbox. Not as a broad term that could be interpreted in a lot of different ways out there, but as in a very specific term where we choose our own resources and we help teachers with that very specific trauma-informed practice in their toolbox.
Member Earl?
I would keep it. I would keep trauma-informed and define it.
I think I would like to amend this on 16 and just put sensitive to student experiences. So there is, it's saying we're sensitive to the student experiences, an acknowledgement that students have unique experiences that
So-
educators should be, okay.
What's
I should have a
the
second.
amendment?
It's in, where it's stricken trauma-informed practices, I would put sensitive to student experiences. Let's see how it,
Okay, so replace trauma-informed practices with,
well, it's already stricken, so just to this, where that would have been, I would put sensitive to student experiences.
well, you're amending the motion, right? You're
Yeah.
amending the amendment.
Yeah,
So.
just adding that in place of,
Okay, I see. Do we have a second?
but it has, it's got some poor research around some of it.
Second, okay, back to Member Earl to speak to that.
Yeah, I do think there is a place for that very thing. And I think that's when I ask people, what do you mean by that? Right? Usually this is what they mean, is it's being sensitive to the students' experiences that they've had. And I'm like, well, then let's use that language. Trauma-informed care has all kinds of different connotations. And we can say, well, we'll define it. But then when we put it in here, we can't guarantee how other people are defining it. So let's say exactly what we mean.
Okay. Member Bogus?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. I don't want to undercut what Member Earl has said. However, grammatically, that does not fit
I know, I wondered
into the
about that.
framework. And so, without objection, I would like to suggest or move that we amend that it say practices accounting for individual students' experience and needs.
We can't amend an amended amendment.
That's why I said without objection.
I know. Member Earl? So going back to Member Earl's motion, let's make sure that it captures what your intent is. Member Davis?
So when we voted for the big one, we totally took out the words trauma-informed practices, they're gone, right? So the words trauma-informed practices are just gone altogether. So these two amendments are suggesting something to put in its place where it was. Thank
The
you.
trauma-informed practices is still in there. It's a motion to remove it and replace it with triple I. And then, 4,
He said it's still in there.
we haven't voted to take it out yet. That's what Member Brinton put on the table originally.
Okay, I thought you were saying it was taken out in your big motion.
This is a different document.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Earl, does this capture your amendment? So the amended amendment is to read, establishing a consistent, organized, and respectful learning environment, including triple I, practices accounting for students' individual experience and needs, and IV, accountability practices. Member Bollinger.
Thank you, Chair. I can appreciate individuals wanting to adjust wordings that maybe upset individuals, but however, this is also a document to help universities understand what is exactly supposed to be taught and what skills teachers need to have. And universities often need to make sure that they're using evidence-based practices and documentation and things that are backed by research. These words and definitions, again, are not in research and evidence, and so it's something that I can't support while the other words that we've used in the past are. So just for that, I won't hash it out. We've had this discussion a long time, but I just struggle for us to make up definitions when we don't have the research to back it up.
Thank you. If I could, I'd move to divide. Is there a second to that? Okay, I'll speak to it. I'd like to divide because I will not vote for 3. I will vote for 4. That's me speaking to it. Please. I can't divide?
It's not necessary to divide because we're voting on the amendment. I should speak.
Please, let us know.
and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I do not believe for the purpose that you just stated, Chair Hymas, that it would be necessary for to divide because we have to vote on Member Earl's motion to amend the amendment first, which is just her proposed III, subset 3. The accountability, subset 4, was part of Member Britton's original amendment to strike trauma-informed practices and then insert accountability. So right now we're just voting on inserting practices accounting for students' individual experience and needs, which is,
Okay.
I believe, what you wanted.
So, well, I rarely get what I want, but if by chance that Member Earl's motion was voted down, accountability, then we'd go back to Member Britton's, and then we can do that. Okay, so with that, then I don't see any other lights, let's go ahead and vote.
So what do we?
Please. So right now, we're not, if we don't need to divide, then we won't divide. And we can.
So it's just the.
So we're voting on Member Earl's amendment to the amendment, which is to ultimately just replace trauma-informed practices with practices accounting for students. That's essentially it. Please, Carol.
Little 3, as amended by Member Earl, doesn't pass, does trauma-informed come back? No. Then we have to
And then
vote
we have to vote, that's when we'll vote
to divide
well, yes, we can vote to divide or
on
Yeah,
the whole thing?
yep.
Got it. Thank you. That's
Thank you.
helpful.
Let's go ahead and vote then. Again, we are voting just on III, replacing trauma-informed practices with practices accounting for students' individual experience and needs. And let's go ahead and vote. Member Brinton's motion, which is to strike trauma-informed practices and replace restorative with accountability. This is where I will move to divide. Can I have a second? Yes. Thank you. Second. Okay. Can we, is there any objection to dividing? Okay. Let's tackle the III first. The motion is to strike trauma-informed practices and. Let's vote.
Wait, to strike?
Oh, to strike it.
Didn't we just vote on that?
Voting is open, board members. This is to strike III. All right, so that motion fails 7-7. Those in favor being Vice Chair Hart, Member Kelly, Member Green, Member Hall, Member Brinton, Member Earl, Member Bogus. So that brings us to our next motion, which is to replace restorative with accountability, so it will read accountability practices rather than restorative practices. And we are ready to vote. That passes 12 in favor, 2 in opposition, those being Member Reel and Member Lear. Okay. This brings us to our underlying motion that the board approve R277-304 Teacher Preparation Programs Draft 2 as amended on second and final reading. Let's vote. Thank you. That passes 9 in favor, 5 in opposition. Those in opposition being Member Green, Member Hart, Member Brenton, Member Earl, and Member Bogus.